Hello, and welcome to Candidates Up Front, a public interest election program of Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. I'm Renee Dietrich, a member of the League, your moderator today. On November 8th, the general election is coming up, and we will vote for state and federal officers. The deadline to register is October 24. The League is interviewing candidates, that is, those who want to be interviewed, in contested races. For each race, the candidates will get the same basic questions and the same amount of time to answer them. The two candidates are competing in the 48th Senate District are Democrat Calvin Clemens and Republican Chris Gebhardt. This district includes Burnville, Hamburg, Leesport, Robisonia, Shoemakersville, Wernersville, Womelsdorf, Lebanon County, and parts of northern Lancaster County. State senators serve a 4-year term in the state legislature in Harrisburg. They initiate legislation and create laws. They pass the budget, including taxes and expenditures of the state. They help constituents with issues regarding state government, and the salary for a state senator is $90,335 per year, plus benefits and expenses. Please note again that the opinions expressed in this interview are those of the candidate and not opinions of the League of Women Voters or Berks Community Television. This interview is with Calvin Clemens. Welcome, Mr. Clemens.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Please tell us, your viewers, about yourself and why are you running for this district?
Well, I am a retired veterinarian. I practiced veterinary medicine for 35 years. Most of my good friends call me Doc, something that I've become comfortable with over the years. And I'm running in this race because I believe that Harrisburg is broken. I feel that we have about 6 people in Harrisburg that are running the state and allowing for the passage or the death of legislation in committees. Last year alone, 4,500 bills were introduced in the state legislature. About 270 of them got out of committee, and about 25 or 30 of them had anything really to do with you and I, the taxpayers. We're not getting anything done. We're not getting anything done because we've had bicameral control of the legislature by one party for the past 35 years, and we have people that are ingrained in the legislature that need to move on. We need to get things done for this state before we end up with serious issues.
Thank you. Now, you are a registered Democrat. What draws you to your party?
Well, I tend to be fiscally conservative and socially liberal. I border around the center. I would consider myself mostly a centrist. And I think that my philosophy fits nicely with many of the social issues of the Democratic Party. I think that I'm not as extreme as I find the Republican Party, so here I am as a Democrat.
Are there things about your party that you're not comfortable with?
Well, yeah, there certainly is, because I am a centrist, and I don't buy into a lot of the far left philosophy. But I think that the party is big enough that it's a large enough tent that we can all fit.
Now, in the General Assembly, your party will want you to vote the party line. People who voted for you will want you to vote their view. People who did not vote for you still expect you to represent them, and you will have your own ideas. How do you balance these? What's your thinking process?
Well, and I think that that's one of the big problems with so many candidates today is that they run either as Republicans or Democrats, and then they get to the legislature and they buy into the party line of the Republican or the Democratic Party. And that's one thing I hope that I can convince you, the voter, of today is that I'm not your typical politician, okay? I come with lots of new, healthy ideas that'll make the state of Pennsylvania move forward. We're entrenched right now in the same old, and if we don't move along, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. We're going to be one of those states that's going to be looking at progress from the rear view mirror instead of getting a front seat. And that's why I want to go to Harrisburg, is because we've got to break that deadlock and we've got to move forward. I will listen to all sides. I have a good ear. I love to listen. And
Okay. Now, on the first day of the legislative session, you'll be asked to approve the rules for conducting business. These rules allow committee chairs, who represent only 17% of Pennsylvanians, to block legislation even if the majority of legislators support it. Should these rules be changed, or are they okay?
well, I think you just heard me say that I'm absolutely appalled at how things are done in Harrisburg, and they've got to change. We've got to allow legislation that's introduced get to the floor and let the General Assembly and the state Senate to vote on these things and give them air so that they have an opportunity to become law. We're just not doing that, and if we don't do that, then we're missing the boat and we're just not moving forward.
Okay. Now, recently, to get around the governor's veto, the legislature has written constitutional amendments which are to be voted on in the primary elections, which we know have a low turnout. In the long run, do you feel it's appropriate to enshrine our state constitution in things that are normally changed through the legislative process?
No, this is absolutely the wrong approach to how we should approach legislation. What that's doing is that it's setting up absolutes, and that's absolutely great when you don't like what the current man is doing. But what happens if the next fella comes along and you really don't like what he's doing, and yet there's no opportunity for you to change that? I think that we need to return to a common sense legislature, and doing it by amendments is just not the correct way to proceed.
Okay. Now, everyone that most of us know is pro-life. But what does that mean? Different things to different people. Like, for example, ending gun violence is pro-life. Preventing climate change, protecting endangered species, being against abortion. Universal health care, ending the death penalty, all are pro-life. On which of these issues or others do you consider yourself pro-life?
Well, I'm definitely pro-life on health care, and I'm definitely pro-life on protecting our environment. I think that as we sit in here today in the air-conditioned room and it's about 1 million degrees out there, I think that we've all come to the conclusion that climate change is real, and if we don't do something about it, we're in for some big trouble. When it comes to abortion, unfortunately, I am pro-choice. The caveat to that is that I think that we've done a very poor job in education and a very poor job in human medicine in helping us avoid the abortion issue. I tend to believe that abortion should be legal. I tend to believe that abortion should be rare, and I tend to believe that abortion should be very well regulated. And I think that if we can proceed on that level, and if we can improve things like birth control, particularly birth control for men, I don't understand why women are the only party that is considered the responsible party for prevention of pregnancy. And I think that we need to begin education on reproductive health at a much earlier age. Beginning it in the 10th and the 11th grade is far too late, and we need to begin that education early and teach our children how human life is made, and teach them how to respect that and to avoid unwanted pregnancies.
Okay, now let's talk about pregnancy here for a minute. In the United States, for every 100,000 pregnant women, 23.8 die soon after pregnancy or during it. This is much higher than other developed nations, especially in minority and rural women. Does Pennsylvania have a responsibility to provide more support to pregnant women to help prevent these deaths, and what would that be?
Yeah, we absolutely do have a responsibility to lower that death rate. It is just something that it's hard to believe that in the United States that we're dealing with such elevated rate as compared to some of the other countries in the world when we're supposed to have the most advanced health care. And we're going to need to improve funding around reproductive care. And I know that the minute you start talking about reproductive care that flares up around the abortion issue, but I just can't imagine one of my daughters having to deal with a full-term pregnancy of a fetus that has died and hasn't had the opportunity to take care of that under the guise of her medical doctor, as opposed to the law in the state of Pennsylvania.
What about the Family Leave Act? Do you think that could help?
Absolutely. I think that would be something that could help prevent fetal death, particularly in certain high-risk pregnancies. My daughter's 37 years old, and they consider her a high-risk pregnancy. So at some point during her pregnancy, it may be that her doctor will tell her that she needs to take it easy, take time off, and not put so much stress on the fetus. So, yeah, family leave would be an excellent thing to help her get through that.
Okay, now let's switch to money. The Pennsylvania legislature recently voted to spend $20 million to help religious institutions and schools add security to their buildings. The money is much appreciated, but with every invention of another weapon, we need more security. Gun violence costs the United States about $557 billion annually. For perspective, that's more than 10 times Pennsylvania's annual budget. Police, ambulance, hospital emergency rooms, and ongoing care. And these costs certainly add to inflation. What can the Pennsylvania legislature do to reduce gun violence and reduce to taxpayers and companies that provide health insurance to their employees?
Well, one thing I want the voter to understand is that I am pro-Second Amendment. I do believe that you have a right to own guns, but I don't think the Second Amendment extends to military-grade weapons. And I happen to believe that it's been since the advent of military weapons available to the general public that we've had this extreme increase in gun violence. It just doesn't seem to me rational that anyone who wants to be a sportsman or a hunter would need to be able to fire 125 rounds in a minute. If that's the case, then I think that probably instead of a gun that does that, you need to go to the shooting range and practice on targets, because that's a lot of bullets at one period of time, and that's what's causing a lot of complication. And the other thing is that we definitely need to enforce the laws that are on the books, and they're not being enforced by a lot of the district attorneys. And we have people that are acquiring guns that are not supposed to have guns. Red flag laws would certainly help that. If we have people who have recently had offenses that would say you shouldn't own a gun, and until they can prove that they're stable, they probably shouldn't own a gun. I know that when people are arrested for DUI, they lose their right to own guns until they've, if it's a first-time offense, go through ADR. And other first-time offenses, their guns will be taken away from them. I think that probably that's a strong point of view to have, so that we can eliminate people who are not stable obtaining weapons that are extremely dangerous. So we take away the dangerous weapons, and we limit the access to dangerous people having them. I think we can greatly reduce our gun violence.
Okay. Now, Berks County is 50% agricultural. We know growing seasons have changed. So far, this summer, Pennsylvania has been spared the massive destruction of wildfires and floods occurring in some states. But we have endured a drought. Should Pennsylvania do more to protect our economy by preventing more climate change? And what do you think the legislature should or shouldn't do to make that happen?
Well, unfortunately, you've touched on a topic here that's really near and dear to my heart because I have been an advocate for addressing climate change for probably 40 years of my life. I currently am a farmer, and as I retired, I developed a small beef herd and horses. I live totally off the grid with solar cells and what have you to produce my energy. And I think that we need to do more things in the realm of agriculture to help people move away from fossil fuels, which are creating a lot of the issues in climate change. I was just at a Farm Bureau function where we toured a dairy farm, and the gentleman has 1.6 million gallons of cow manure that's underneath his running barn. He pumps that out twice a year and puts it on the field, when in fact he could pump that out and put that in a digester, produce methane, steam the methane to hydrogen and run his tractor, run his trucks, sell it to power companies, and as I said to him that day, you could probably become the Saudi Arabia of Lebanon County. I think that we need to move into a new area of producing our energy, and that's something that we've just been hesitant to do.
Would planting more trees help?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely a proponent of more trees. And the nice thing about trees is that big trees can be cut down and little trees can be planted, and it's a continuous cycle of new trees. So that is a good part of keeping our climate healthy.
Now, in 2022 to 2023, the state budget contains large increases for education funding, but it's a one-year thing. We have 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, most of which rely heavily on the property tax because the legislature hasn't agreed to any long-range plan for school funding. We have charter schools that pull in $2.6 billion from public school budgets. Some say Pennsylvania's charter school law doesn't provide for enough transparency and accountability that is required of our public schools. Two questions. What is your view on how Pennsylvania funds both public schools and charter schools, and do we need charter school reform?
Well, the first question is, my answer would be is that we don't fund enough. There's no substitute for good, solid education, primary education and secondary education and advanced education. That is the way that we will get around issues of climate change and some of the problems that we're faced with in society today. And if we don't educate our children and have them help us change the way that we're doing things, then we're going to be looking in the rearview mirror at things as opposed to being at the forefront. There are so many things that we can do.
Okay. All right. Oh, what about charter schools? Do they need a reform?
Charter schools are just something that I'm not absolutely thrilled with. Unfortunately, they take a large part of the budget away from public schools, and I think that we need serious reform.
Okay, now, Pennsylvania is one of 9 states with a closed primary. The primary is a spring election in the main parties. The Republicans and the Democrats choose their candidates. And unless there happens to be a question on the ballot, only Democrats and Republicans can vote. Some states have open primaries where all voters choose candidates. Research shows that states with open primaries had more moderate or centrist candidates, while states with closed primaries had candidates that are more radical, either to the right or the left. Should Pennsylvania change how we run our primary election? Please tell us why you feel the way you do.
Well, I definitely think that we should have open primaries. I agree with the statement that the way that it is currently, we end up with candidates that are either far left or far right, and we don't have centrist candidates. Now, I tend to be a centrist myself. I think that we get more accomplished when we can sit down in a room and we can talk to each other and come up with agreements. It's just like the Inflation Reduction Bill, that didn't give everybody everything that they wanted, but it was a little of everything for everyone. And so that's how we got a happy compromise. And those are the kind of people that we need in the legislature to be able to move forward.
Now, compared to other states, Pennsylvania has rather weak laws on campaign finance reform and enforcement. Are there loopholes in the disclosure laws that apply to lobbyists? And lawmakers can't be blamed for taking gifts the way the laws are. Do these laws need to be strengthened, or are Pennsylvania's laws just fine the way they are?
Well, I have to say shame on the legislature for the way the laws currently are and what little they've done to improve upon it. And they can take monetary gifts, I mean, they can take tickets, they can take trips and what have you. And I think that that's just absolutely wrong. You have lobbyists buying their votes. And I think that we as taxpayers can all see that clearly in what transpires in the gas industry. You know, that gas that's underneath the state that they're fracking out belongs to all of us. We're all part of the Commonwealth, and yet it gets fracked out and we don't get anything for it. So that's just got to stop.
Okay. Now, many people think that Pennsylvania's election law is out of date. In the past 3 years, there have been some hastily made legislative changes that haven't worked out the way legislatures thought they would. We've had disagreements, court suits. We've lost election officials because the job became so stressful due to constant change. Certainly, isn't there a more reasonable way to bring our election code up to date? And what kinds of changes would you make to see in our election code?
Well, it definitely has been a bit of a mess. I think that we could probably, as intelligent legislators, sit down and come up with something that is a very middle of the road, happy election law that everybody would agree with. I think that we all need to agree that the elections need to be made easier for people to get to the polls because of the way that life has changed. But we also need to be sure that those that are going to the polls are valid voters. So there are things that we can do, that we can sit down without the rhetoric of the left or the right, and we can come together and get an election law that makes everyone happy and makes the elections valid without fraud.
Okay, now let's talk about money. Founding father Alexander Hamilton fought for and set up Federal Reserve Bank to set monetary policy. It's not in the Constitution, but it is a driving force in handling inflation. Inflation, of course, is not a problem that the Pennsylvania legislature can solve by itself. So we haven't asked you how you would solve it. The question is, should the legislature consider the inflationary or deflationary aspects of the bills it considers? If so, how far forward should we look?
I think that's important because inflation is an issue right now. Obviously, coming out of the pandemic where people stayed home, they didn't spend money. They had lots of money, but we didn't make much in the way of goods. We had a lot more money chasing goods than we did goods that they could get, which I think we all understand is inflationary, and that's what caused a big spike in inflation. So we need to get that ironed out. But yeah, the state should consider every bill that they pass as to whether it's inflationary or deflationary. They should consider every mandate that they force on school districts as to whether that's going to substantially increase the budget or the schools are going to have to increase taxes to be able to fund it.
Okay, now we're coming to the end of our time, so I'm going to ask you if you would like to make a closing statement.
Yeah, I would. I hope that just by spending a little time with you today that you get the clear impression that I'm not a typical politician, that I do bring to the arena a whole new perspective of ideas that I think that we need to move forward with in Pennsylvania. We need to do things about climate change. We need to do things about fossil fuels. There's just so many problems that we need to attack, but they're not going to get done if we're going to continue to deal with the broken legislature that we have in Harrisburg right now. Unfortunately, there was a quote here about 17%. I think there are about 5 or 6 people that control all the legislation that is passed in Pennsylvania. We need to change that. We need to get this out in the open. We need to be able to talk about it and give you an opportunity to pick representatives that will get you the right plan for Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens, for sharing your views with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
Viewers, please remember that there is another candidate for the 24th Senate District, Chris Gebhardt. He has not yet scheduled an interview. Now, to check your own voting status, go to there it is up on the screen, vote.pa.gov. You can register, change your party, locate your polling place, or apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot. The deadline to register is October 24th, and the deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is November 1. Then, check the League's online voters guide, vote411.org, to confirm your new voting district and get more information on the candidates. I want to remind viewers, too, that redistrict is in force. You may have a different representative this year than you had last year, so check that. Or you can contact the Berks County Election Services, and that is up on your screen too. And there's the phone number, 610-478-6490. Thank you for watching Candidates Up Front. I'm Renee Dietrich. Have a good day.